now, your True Adventure host, Bill Burrud.
Hi there, this is Bill Burrud saying welcome to Adventure. True adventure filmed as it happens throughout our fascinating world. This show offers a good example of the things that make it so fascinating. We'll be going into the remote jungle reaches of Central America to see a tribe of people still clinging to an age-old life, whose roots reach back across a dozen centuries. The Lacandones, exiles by choice in this forgotten corner of Yucatan in Mexico. Yet they're heirs to a tradition of glory, because this handful of simple and primitive souls living in huts, practicing only the simplest crafts, is all that is left of the once proud Mayan civilization. You catch only a faint echo of that greatness now. The jungle has almost swallowed up the ruins of their cities, and soon the Lacandones themselves may follow the same path to oblivion. 400 men, women, and children, the sole survivors of a nation of 1 million that ruled half a continent. We'll meet them. We'll share the memories of a man who lived among them. They're a strange people, but friendly, with an odd charm all their own. It's a rare experience that we have in store, one that I'm sure you'll agree deserves to be called a true adventure.
We are deep in Mexico, only a few miles from the southern border of Guatemala. Matter of fact, you'd have to look closely at a map to spot this town of Tenosique. Guidebooks only mention it as a place where the railroad from Veracruz to Yucatan crosses the river, the Rio Usumacinta, Mexico's largest river. Tenosique's 4,000 inhabitants follow a relaxed, drowsy pattern that's natural to the tropics. They're content to let a busy world pass them by. Their basic needs are simple, and the generous waters of the river Usumacinta easily fulfill them. A quiet place. Maybe you're wondering what we can expect it to yield in the way of an adventure, but another glance at that map I mentioned a moment ago will answer the question. Upriver from Tenosique, the map shows nothing. This sleepy town is an outpost on the edge of the all but unexplored Campeche Forest, the region where our true adventurer Don Rathlin will renew a friendship with the Lacandon Tribe, the lost tribe of the Mayans, who are the only occupants of that vast tropic wilderness. Half an hour's flying will turn the clock back 1,000 years to the time when the Mayan ancestors of these people were masters of the jungle empire. Our journey was timed for the dry season. The Usumacinta's wandering channel shows wide expanses of beaches. It was the combination of rugged terrain and heavy annual rainfall that sealed the Lacandon tribe off from outsiders for so many centuries. A lost tribe. The land route into their region was difficult at any season, completely impenetrable during bad weather. It was just 2 years ago that a landing strip was cleared. The Lacandones came face to face with the modern world for the first time. And here they are, the last of the Mayans. So we unload our supplies and get ready for our stay with these strange people. The pilot heads back immediately. It's been arranged that he'll pick up our party in 2 weeks. Don Rathlin was new to this village. It wasn't included in his earlier visit with the Lacandones. But their lively curiosity makes it easy to get acquainted. Now, I want you to watch this. Watch the reaction that his ballpoint pen gets from these strange people. Needless to say, he also told them that it rode underwater. Now, these are a mild-hearted and a charming people, and naturally, you see all of those traits at their best in their children. Well, she needs a little practice, but soon she'll be joining in the work of the community. There's a few tricks of the trade to master. For instance, Mother will have to show her the knack of using her feet when there aren't enough hands to go around. Now, some of the cloth is brought from outside by visitors like Don, but the everyday smock is worn from cotton that the Lacandons grow themselves. Identical garments and a universal hairstyle, too. As a matter of fact, you have to look very closely to tell the men from the women in the Lacandon settlements. That, along with their small stature and their smiling grace, adds to their odd charm. Remnants of a race of conquerors. They seem more like dolls to me. Or they seem more like the gentle offspring of some planet possibly more peaceful than our own. The lost world mood is heightened by the incredible lushness of the surrounding rainforest. Tropic foliage takes on bizarre and unfamiliar disguises. And Don gets a chance to see all this. A short hike from one clearing to another is enough to suggest the variety of life that thrives here. Much of it surprisingly tame. Probably there've never been enough intruders to teach them caution. Some are naturally shy. This fella's not going to show his wings off to total strangers. No, sir. You let the wrong people see how pretty you are, and the first thing you know, they'll be after you with a net. But these young upstarts, they don't pay much attention to their grumpy cousins. Not a care in the world. They flaunt their wings in the sunlight and let the shy one wander off into the shadows by himself. Now, here's another solitary type. A tapir. His limp is a reminder that the jungle can be a harsh and hostile place. It's probably a reminder of a recent bout with a jaguar. The tapir is large, almost as big as he looks to this tiny Kinkajou. But his only defense against jaguars is to run wildly through the dense jungle, hoping that an overhanging branch will knock his enemy off his back. Well, says the Kinkajou, he does look fierce. That's enough to scare me. The constant drama of the forest surrounds Don Rathlin and his Lacandon bearers as they move along the trail. It even has its moments of comedy relief. Now, this pair of house-hunting woodpeckers manages to get involved in a slapstick routine with a family of parrots. You'd think that one of the neighborhood gossips would tell them that that particular hole is already rented. But they let them wander all over, even sizing up the second floor. Before, lo and behold, the owners turn up. Macaw parrots that have a prior claim, and all the local gossips have a good laugh at the woodpecker's expense. The macaw, well, he's got a few questions. Who's been tromping around in here? The neighbors can't manage to stop laughing long enough to give him a straight answer. all quit laughing. And the woodpecker stands by. You never know when the macaws might take it in their head to move out. And friendly Sam, the vulture, well, he's waiting to collect his usual commission if the place changes hands. But the macaws are there to stay, and the woodpeckers have to settle for a place way out in the suburbs. Say, this place isn't so uncivilized. They've already got a housing shortage all their own. But it doesn't affect everybody. Some birds have sort of adopted their own solution to the housing shortage. Just take a look at these. He's proud of his home, and boy, he means it when he says drop in sometime. Well, you're almost sorry to leave the forest behind. But we've reached another Lacandon settlement just in time to join in an informal get-together. The villagers are bidding a temporary farewell to Philip Bear, the Protestant missionary who's lived among them for the last few years. Bear and his family have brought much medical and material help, and they've learned to genuinely love the Lacandons. They haven't made much headway with actual conversations, but basically, the sweet spirit of the tribe gives hope for the future. Who couldn't love that? The missionary is off for a short visit to another village, and the crowd that gathers to see him off listens very respectfully to his parting message. Judging by his gestures, it's something about the afterlife. Yes, a fascinating lost tribe of Mayans, but their new ideas gradually taking root in the age-old culture of the Lacandon. Why, it looks like our true adventurer, Don Rathlin, wasn't expecting us back quite yet. But frequent baths are so vital in the tropics that you'll learn to take the usual ideas of privacy more casually. Much of the daily routine in this Lacandon village centers around a cool brook which wanders through the midst of the settlement. Notice how friendly the people are. They always have kind of a warm smile on their faces. One of the tribesmen, a fellow named Bor, spelled B-O-R, has thought of a way to lighten the routine a bit. He's a newcomer. He moved here from another village in search of a wife. And he's decided that the welcome he's been shown calls for a celebration. So he's preparing a batch of balché. It's a ceremonial drink made from the fibers of a tree of the same name. A dugout, or cayuco, as it's called, is filled with water, and the bark is put to soak. If you're listening carefully, you might jot this recipe down. Sugarcane juice is added to the brew, and then it's covered very gently with banana leaves. Now, it'll stand all day, and it'll be ready for drinking late in the afternoon, presumably for the cocktail hour. A strainer will be needed, so one of the women is busy piercing the hollow shell of a fruit called the jicara. The boring tool is crude but efficient. It's a scrap of metal from a tin can mounted on a stick. Now the big moment is at hand, and one look in the cayuco tells you why the strainer is needed. It's a bit cloudy. No one in the gathering crowd of villagers seems anxious to be the first to sample it. Balché is a new drink to them. This was Bor's idea, so by golly, he can test it for himself as far as they're concerned. So he strains a little out. By the looks of his face, I guess Boer is just an abbreviation of Borgia. Well, maybe it's a little bitter, but curiosity gets the best of everybody, and they all give it a go. The consumer panel came up with a sort of a mixed reaction. Some liked it and some didn't. But the cayuco didn't stay full. Maybe it's an acquired taste like olives. Don Rathlin's verdict, well, I'll tell you, I think actions always speak louder than words. So let's take a look at Don and see how he feels. There you are. You can judge by these faces that balché acts as a mild stimulant, but it is not alcoholic. Even the youngsters can drink their fill. Don did note some after effects, though. The bark apparently contains some drug that induces a headache. But that didn't spoil the fun. No, sir. The guide brought out a harmonica and tried to encourage a little dancing. Quaint native customs? Not exactly. Boer was determined to show off steps that he'd learned in the city, but he only managed to confuse his young wife. Well, the balché party is over, and the next day sees things getting back to normal in the village. You know, the spinners can't neglect their work for long. They form thread bit by bit in the age-old way. A bit of ash in the bowl is the only way they know of making the spindles turn more easily. Weaving is carried on in an equally primitive way. The crude looms of the Lacandons, the lost tribe, can produce only a coarse cloth. The traditional cotton garment is much heavier than you'd expect to find in a humid climate, like the one we're in. But it's the best the native workers can produce with the means at their disposal. Another daily chore that the people have, and a very important one too, besides weaving, is that of preparing the tortillas, which are the staple of the Lacandon diet. It's amazing to see that untold generations of skill that has been bred into the fingers of these women, probably a remnant of the ancient Mayans themselves. They spread a layer of dough on a banana leaf and work it endlessly, flattening it. Lumps are painstakingly removed. The final result is as thin as parchment. You'll see it in just a moment. They cook quickly on the grid, but the preparation of them takes hours each day. The Lacandons cling to the ancient maize diet of their Mayan ancestors. But they aren't stubborn at all about new ideas. They may put a practical device to a whimsical use. Their appreciation is obvious and genuine. Nevertheless, the broad outlines of their life are fixed and changeless as time itself. We mentioned earlier that Boer had come here from another village in quest of a wife. Well, he eventually chose these two. The younger is about 7 or 8 years old. She is wife in name only for the time being. The other one is 11 or 12 years old and is marriageable by Lacandon custom. Shocking? Perhaps. But it's a matter of tribal survival. They number a mere 200 or so, and they live in the constant knowledge of the fact that they are on the brink of extinction. Custom, that word that covers a lot of ground. It's hard for us to see how something like snails could be treated as a delicacy, but there are probably items of our diet that would be just as repulsive to the Lacandons. And let's face it, world gourmet opinion backs them up in this case. Snail meat is a favorite dish in many nations. Well, the days have sped by. Don Rathlin's visit to the lost tribe is nearly over. But there is time for one more side trip. He'd brought along a collapsible boat with this sort of thing in mind. A short hike takes them down to the banks of the Rio Achaha, a tributary of the Usumacinta. Don confesses that his share of the work was over right then. He was free to lean back and watch and enjoy the view while the guide did all the paddling. Talk about turning back time. Look at this. You can't blame him for being lulled into a lazy mood. There's a hypnotic fascination to watching the foliage itself and the creatures who live in it. Look carefully now, you might spot something. There, see him? Well, that's an anteater. I don't know what he's doing in a tree, but I guess he knows his job better than I do. Maybe he's looking for high-altitude ants. Easy, old boy. Somebody else is lazy, but their position is a little riskier than ours. An iguana always on the lookout for unguarded turtle eggs. They look like they're asleep, but the iguana wants to make sure. The odds are wrong if it comes to a fight. Easy does it. I want to wake up the others. Well, better not take a chance. So the iguana reluctantly goes back to his vegetarian diet. Now it was Don's final hour with the Lacandons. He joined the group around the fire and listened to the chant songs, weird melodies with words the Lacandons themselves scarcely understand. These are the only means the tribe has of summoning up the spirit of the past, of turning back the clock to the ancient Mayan days when great temples stood in the jungles. Today they're tumbled into ruins. Strangling tendrils of the jungle almost hide them from view. The vast hoard of Mayan knowledge of art, astronomy, mathematics is forever, forever lost, except perhaps locked up in the minds of the Lacandons themselves. It is whispered that some Lacandon tribesmen still come in secret to make offerings in the ancient way, even though the gods have been silent for centuries. The Lacandons have saved nothing, nothing from the wreckage of this, the great Mayan Empire. Nothing, unless you count their warm spirit and their subtle dignity. Is it too far-fetched to think that they inherited that from ancestors who were the masters of Mexico? No, I don't think so. And with that as their sole possession, they are infinitely rich because they have mastered peace of mind.
The Lacandons, a vivid reminder of a chapter of history that you might think had ended long ago. But that only goes to prove something that we already knew. It's a strange world we live in. Threads from the past, present, and the future are all woven into its fascinating fabric. What weird contrasts it can sometimes offer to us. Just consider one possible example. Let yourself imagine one of those simple, gentle Lacandons amid the Yucatan jungle, gazing up into a mild tropic sky and puzzling over the bright streak left by an orbiting space flight. What a tremendous gap there is between the two worlds that sight represents. Think of the centuries of change it reflects. Mayans and moon probes, both part of the realm of true adventure. Well, I'm glad you were with us to share this show, and until we meet again, this is Bill Burrud saying, may all your adventures be happy ones.